everybody. This is going to be a wonderful afternoon for you. I'm so glad you chose to spend it with Deborah and I. Let me tell you a little bit about Deborah. Deborah Strauss is an internationally acclaimed klezmer violinist, educator, and dancer who has been at the forefront of the klezmer and Yiddish music scene for over 30 years. She is a member of the Strauss-Warschauer Duo, was a longtime member of the Klezmer Conservatory Band, and has performed with the Grammy Award-winning Klezmatics. She has appeared on numerous recordings, was featured in the Emmy Award-winning film Itzhak Perlman in The Fiddler's House, and appears in the film Theodore Bickel in the Shoes of Shalom Aleichem. Deborah has performed and taught across North America and throughout Western and Eastern Europe, Australia, and Israel. She leads workshops and classes annually at the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, Yiddish Summer Weimar, Yiddish New York, and Klez Canada. Along with klezmer superstar Alan Byrne, Deborah is the author of Klezmer Duets for Violin and Accordion, published in 2017 by Universal Edition, Vienna. Thank you, Deborah. That is just a pishuk bit of little information.
I'm still trying to get over the 30 years part.
I know. It's good. You look good.
We do what we can.
Yes. All right, Deborah. I want to start with beginnings. Beginnings are at the beginning. You had a special and unique musical childhood. Your mother played a great role in your musical life. Can you talk about this?
It's a joy to talk about it, actually. Some of my earliest memories really are related to music at home and also in the synagogue. And at home, I started playing violin when I was about 6, and I played because my father played a little bit. And he played because he had a violin from his father, who brought it. His father was from Poland, from Lublin and Warsaw, but he didn't get the violin there. He got the violin when he was 11 and in London on his own. So I had this feeling like, I'm going to play violin. Also, the teacher was across the street, and I'm the youngest, and my mother was sick of driving the other 2 siblings anywhere. And she played with me every day. She practiced with me every day. So there was this sort of feeling of that music in the house. But more important, even than that, was my time in shul. And from my earliest memories, the shul was actually still, I grew up in Buffalo, and we live in the first suburb, it's really still the city. It's Kenmore. And you can walk to shul. So we would walk to shul. And because so many people had gone already out to the suburbs, I was one of the very few children there. And it was an incredible environment to be in. There were the people were generally older. There were many immigrants. There were many survivors. There were people who came before the war, people who came after the war. I would say mostly Eastern European, some German as well. So I was surrounded by accents, by singing, and the great fortune to have incredible chazonim. And I think I'm starting after all these years, I feel like there's a way in which I'm connecting threads that's very satisfying. It's really easy to feel, you and I talked about this the other day, it's easy to feel a little discontinuous or disjointed, I think, that can be a personality trait, and it also is a lot of times about our work, because you do one thing and then you move on, and it's really hard to feel that there's connection among the things that you do. But I'm starting to pull all of these threads together, and one of them I realize so much is that those early sounds, particularly from a small man from Poland named William Nissenson, and I can hear his voice in my head. Um, we are looking for some recordings that we may have of him, but I can just feel something. I can see him standing on the bima, the high bima, in his kittel on the high holidays, and I can just sort of, I hear his voice in my head, and I feel myself sitting. It was quite a traditional synagogue, but with mixed seating. And when my father wasn't on the bima, I would sit next to him. And I've heard this from other people. I've heard that you sit and you play with the tzitzis on your father's, at that time, father's tallis. And so I've got this tactile feeling and this oral feeling and a physical feeling of this. And it really, and I liked it from a very early age. And my mom recently has told me stories about how attentive I was and how I just sat and listened. And there was something that spoke to me. I grew up very much with that. I grew up very much with, I went to Jewish day school. My father had spoken Yiddish when he was a boy. He spoke Yiddish to his father, but my father was really about modern Hebrew. And that was the focus at home, except for a few songs here and there that my mother might have sung with choirs, that she might have led choirs. With Theodor Bacall records, with those wonderful Israeli folk dance records with people leaping across the front, which I still like to listen to. So I didn't grow up in a context that said there is this Yiddish musical tradition. I grew up in a context that said this is your Jewish ritual tradition, and at home it was about classical music, a little bit of Hasidic music, and very much about Israeli music. And the Yiddish came later.
How did you first hear about klezmer?
I went to college in New Jersey, and I went to Rutgers, and I was studying music. And in my first semester, there was, I think this joke is really stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. There was a posting in the music department, but in those days it was a bulletin board and a piece of paper, and it was written on it, come play Jewish music. And this was 1984 or 85. And I thought, sounds good. And I went to this person's house. They were not affiliated with Rutgers. They actually were people coming, like so many. They came out of the Balkan scene. They were quite a bit older than I was. And they were searching for their own roots music. And they were, in those days, you didn't just get together and jam. You formed a band and started playing gigs. And that's what we did. That's what we did. And in those days, I read out of Kamen books, the folios of sort of like a klezmer gig book. I transcribed from Giora Feidman. I transcribed from Andy Statman, that wonderful recording with the French horn on it. And I had to write out, and I say this to anybody out there if there's anyone there who studies with me or is learning, the confession is I had to write out my second parts. I had to go ta, ta, and write it out. And I was really fixated on music. I couldn't go anywhere without my pile of music. And that went on for my college times. I played a lot of gigs. I sang 2 songs. My father helped me with the songs, which was very exciting. Um,
What were the songs?
you could probably guess.
Shane
Ru-
de la Luna.
no, no. For my world, it was for you. It would be Shane V. de Lavona because you're so jazzy. Roger Kismet Mandlin and Afen Pripacek. And I actually played for some seniors, and we played a few times. And a lady came up to me and said, it wouldn't hurt to learn a few more songs. And she was right. Um, and again, I mean, Susan is amazing. You all know that Susan is amazing. And what I discovered when we talked yesterday or the day before is what a gentle and comforting interviewer she is, because it's actually a little scary to talk about yourself. You don't know how far to go, what to uncover. Um, you want to sort of try hard not to just repeat your patter. You get into, well, I did this and I learned this and I had this. And it's worthwhile to maybe dig a little deeper. And I think this time that we've all had on the computer and not on the road, if there's a best circumstance, if you're lucky enough to have better circumstances, which I'm grateful for, it gives you a lot of time to think and to make to open some pretty intense things. And I've said this before, but I'm going to share this. It was 1985, and I could have gone to Klez Camp. And I didn't go because I was too shy. My bandmates went, and I just didn't do it. And I didn't go until the early 90s, which is, this is just, it's the way it was. And you have to, you accept yourself for who you are. I did go to Balkan Camp in 85. I can't believe I went to Balkan Camp. I went to meet Meshke Alpert. I wanted to meet Michael. And that's kind of all and I played with, the fiddle player from California, Myman Miller. I took a class with Myman Miller. That was awesome. And this was also the first move for me. I feel like I'm talking too much.
That's what we're here for, to listen to you talk.
But it's really interesting because I only played classical music. I didn't think that you could be a violinist if you didn't play classical music. And I wanted to do something special, and I went to Rutgers not for music, but just for general liberal arts education. And when I was there, I thought, I want to do something special. And I looked at my violin and thought, and I was way behind because in high school I was all about, United Synagogue Youth, and I didn't practice very much. But I sang and danced a lot. But I went to Balkan Camp and I heard Myman Miller and I heard Michael, and it was actually the first time it occurred to me that you could be a wonderful fiddler, a wonderful violinist, and not be playing classical music. And that was huge. It changed my life. It changed my whole life. I made it through. Well, let me back up. I met Michael. I played right, Borgestans. I played Borgestans for him. We were in a little shed, I think like a workshop shed, like for maintenance people. And I'm also going to share my sad story, which I told Susan the other day, which is that he gave me Leon Schwartz's phone number, and I waited. I was focused on school. I was pretty reserved. I wasn't very daring in a lot of ways in those days, and I waited. And I waited too long. So to this day, I'm so grateful that we have videos of this wonderful fiddler and mensch who sang and spoke. And I'm so grateful that he had such a close relationship with Michael, There are wonderful videos of him that Itzik Gottesman made with Michael Alpert, and there's music. And I looked in the Evo collection of his papers, and he became hugely important to me, even though I missed meeting him by this much.
Yeah. Um, he he has been somebody whose repertoire has really made an impact on you. Can you share some of that repertoire with us?
Sure, I would love to. And actually, let me just fast forward one more iota, because I don't want to leave myself hanging sadly because I didn't get to meet Leon. I actually was really fortunate because right after college, I took a year off. I didn't play for a year because I was traumatized by my classical music education. And I worked as a paralegal. And then I went to the University of Chicago and I studied ethnomusicology. And again, not connected to the university, but through the folk festival and the community, I met Kurt Bierling. And he handed over to me the cassette tapes. The cassette tapes. It probably took me another 6 months or a year before I listened to them. I'm slow. I'm a late bloomer. And I listened to the recordings, in this case, of the wonderful fiddlers from early in the 20th century, like Solinsky or Gegner. Um, and I remember listening to them for the first time, transcribing without writing down, but just doing it by ear, and being so, my head exploded. And actually, what had happened before is I heard the Chicago Klezmer Ensemble play. There were three of them at the time: a fiddle, cymbal or piano, and Kurt. And it just, what was coming out of them blew me away. And I didn't know that that's what klezmer music could sound like. And it just became, like so many of us, it became that obsession. And Saturday nights for me, because I didn't have gigs really early on then, I was studying. And Saturday night for me was a bath. I can't believe I'm going to share this. Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
Yeah.
And these cassette recordings, either of someone like Solinsky or Gegner, Seingut, Abe Schwartz, or Leon. And those were my Saturday nights. That's what I did. I was completely obsessed. I was really fortunate that Kurt was in my life because he had an amazing way of being able to teach some of the stylistic signifiers, like Kratzen and Sekund, accompaniment. And he was learning the cymbal. So we just would sit and play and play and play and play together. And that was hugely formative for me. And again, it was learning that there was there was another world. Well, like in a different world. That's the name of Leon Schwartz's commercial CD. Let me see if I can get to share screen. I think I can. And here's this. Share sound. Great. All right, so this is, I'm sure some of you have heard this before. This is Asher Nosan Lanu Teures or Toras Emes, about the truth of the Torah. We'll look at the words in a minute. It actually, you find it in the blessing for saying your Aliyah. But what's amazing about this recording is that they left in his talking and his singing and then his playing. And to me, this is what we're all about. We're all about drawing on every thread, every sense possible in order to form a modern sense of this wonderful Yiddish musical world. A lot of it was fragmented, a lot of it was lost, some of it kept going, like the Yiddish song tradition, as so many people point out, but so much was lost that we actually need to draw on multiple sources. It's also just a really physical thing. It's a physical thing. So I find this recording particularly exciting, and I'm hopefully going to play it for you right now.
Asher nosalunu Torah semes, Asher nosalunu Torah semes, Asher nosalunu Torah semes, Torah semes. V'chayei olam nota b'socheinu, V'chayei olam nota b'socheinu, V'chayei olam nota b'socheinu. This is the atmosphere I was brought up in. The education was a cheder. I remember the first day I went to cheder because they carried me to cheder. The cheder, the very first thing that what they taught you is to be able to read the siddur. And never forget it with the way that Getzel Schwartz used to say, Lebeler. He used to get up, yeah, Rebbe. Buchstabieren, you had the word buchstabieren. Komets Aleph O, Komets Beis Bo, Komets Gimel Go, then O, Bo, Go, Segel Aleph Ha, Segel Beis Be.
He loved those long last notes.
Deborah, I can really hear his influence in your playing. Can you demonstrate? Can you play something from his repertoire on your violin?
Sure. Oh, you know what I'm going to play? Boy, it's not even... Let me think for a minute. So I'm actually going to play something that I didn't practice at all, but I'm inspired to play it because he did it in such a unique way, and it's a tune that so many people know. It's that we all know that tune. I often will play from his repertoire Dem Rebensnigen, which he learned. It's a wonderful sort of more rubato piece. I play that a lot. But I love in this other piece how he enlivened it so that it actually felt tasty instead of regimented. So let me give it a try. I'm going to stand up though.
Deborah, when you play, you look in love. You look like
Well,
you're in love.
and that's funny because I played so much yesterday, and actually I felt really inspired after talking to you, Susan. We That was an amazing conversation, and oh, I just was like improvising and playing, and I didn't play that. But it really came to my mind because it's got some of these funny little, he repeats the die da 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 die da 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 da, which is a little funny internal intention mistake. I don't know, but it's funny, and it's sort of a nice marker when you meet other people who've learned from the recording that we do that, and then the little pits, and then the going up at the end. And for me, he didn't come from a klezmer family. Um, Michael Albert always talks about the fiddlers being kind of on a continuum from sort of a more rural style to a more city style. Um, and I think that Leon comes in a certain way from a more rural style. Um, a lot of things he didn't learn from klezmer musicians, he learned from Roma musicians, and but he learned so much vocal music, and he was a bal tefillah. He led services, and he read Torah, and I feel like that whole embodiment is really, really something that we can connect to. And he was always learning. He was always learning until the very end of his life, and that's also extremely inspiring. Um, and I think, Susan, you mentioned sort of being in love, and that's really, I haven't thought about this in years, and I know it's a little funny sounding, um, but used to feel like I would channel him and I would play along. I felt this also with some of the other fiddlers and some of the other recordings. You put your headphones on, and you're on your Gigunda Marantz recorder, which was so heavy. And you couldn't really adjust, you could adjust it a little bit, but not like down the octave. And I would just play I put a mute on, and I would have headphones, and I would play like I was inside. And it just felt, I haven't thought about this in years. This is really, really wonderful to think about, because you get separated from it. You get separated from those early urges and influences, and it just felt so natural. It just felt so natural to me.
Well, Deborah, it's interesting because you're growing up in shul listening to that music, listening to the chazonas, listening to we talked about listening to English with a Polish accent and the flow of the language and the rhythm of the language. And when I heard Leon speak, I heard him speak with that same language
Yiddish, yeah.
that you heard. And it shows up in his playing and it shows up in your playing. And so there's this kind of symbiotic uh, experience that you have with him. And it makes so much sense that you would be drawn to him because you're hearing what he's hearing, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Can
And
you
it,
play something else? Can you play
sure. Let me play of his repertoire.
anything you want? Yeah,
Okay.
maybe of his repertoire.
Um, sure. Let me play just a little bit of Dem Rebensnigen so we can remind everybody what it sounds like. Um, I've played it a bunch lately over the summer, so I don't think I'm going to play the whole thing. Um, it's funny because I've chosen Jeff's downstairs, and I've chosen actually not to have my duo partner of 25 years. Um, and I've chosen to do this just sort of in the clear. I think that you said you grew up. I thought you were saying you're growing up. And hopefully I am growing up. Um, so let me play just a little bit of that, and then there's something else that I would really love to play that's actually from, it's a Baragovsky tune. Baragovsky's just, oh, thanks to Ilana and Craig and so many wonderful people, and of course all the people like Mark Slobin and Michael Alpert and Kurt Bierling and others who made this material possible. In those days, I had, oh, this one. And it wasn't reprinted at the time. And I used to like go to the Strand in New York, and if I would find a copy, I would buy it. So there was a point where I would have like 3, 4, 5 copies of it to give to people because it wasn't easily accessible. And then they did another edition, and now it's online, and we have recordings. It's just miraculous what's happened. It's miraculous. I never would have imagined it. But at the time, this is what I had, and you can see how it's falling apart. And the piece that I will play is number, it's called a Skotchna. It's number 88. And it actually, it's kind of a composite of a lot of different tunes. There are sections that people will know. But let me first start with a little bit of Dem Rebensnigen, which he learned from the singing of a rabbi who was passing through his town. little taste of a wonderful piece. And actually, there are some recordings of him singing it. And if you can catch Michael Alpert singing it, it's really amazing. It's just a great piece and a great example of how singing and playing are like this, in my opinion. Now, did you want me to play another instrumental now? Great.
I do.
I'm very unclear as to the timing, so you'll just lead
You
me.
just go and don't worry
Lead me.
about it. Yeah.
So this is the Scotchna that I mentioned. And I often teach this tune. It's a great teaching tune because it's it's simple in some ways. So you can teach it in a very simple way, and then you can layer complexity on top of that, which is so much about what klezmer music is that layering. And then if you're with a group of people who have different levels, they can layer. And fewer notes are wonderful. And you have to remind yourself and remind people who play lots of notes that you can also take away notes. Then that's really exciting. That's really exciting.
Deborah,
Susan.
your your playing has a neshama of its own. It's so, I don't want to say beautiful, I don't want to say amazing. It it's alive, and it's 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 got a powerful voice and a strong, gentle. It's got a neshama of its own. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Um, I wanted change direction and go into another avenue that you do incredibly, and that is dance. Why are you laughing?
Ooh, nervous laughter.
Oh, okay. Um, how did you learn Yiddish dance?
Okay, so this also has a few layers and some of the same cast of characters. I probably first played for dancing when I went to Poland in 92 or 3, I think, for the first time. And I played in a band with members of Brave Old World, and Michael was teaching dancing. And I probably spent a really long time but playing for dancing, and with Sana Modica too. She was there too, playing accordion from Germany and Holland. And when Michael dances, he tells stories and he interacts with the musicians. So you feel like you're having this conversation. And Kurt was playing clarinet, and he's so amazing at doing this. And it was an incredible incubator. But I didn't start dancing yet. I started dancing like ballet when I was 12. I was really late to it, but I loved it so much. I mean, I sort of, in an alternate universe, I would be a dancer. Then I had the chance, to be in spaces with Michael, with Zev, watching and sometimes playing. And in terms of, I know you asked about the dance leading, I learned so much from Steve Weintraub about how to work with people, how to corral people in a happy way. But the style of it, which I got so much from all of them, also, of course, from watching videos like of Bronya Sakina, but going back a ways to probably the same ladies who told me I should learn a couple more Yiddish songs. I sang those 2 songs for like, I don't know how many years. We would go and we would play. This happened when I would go to these senior centers with Kurt, and then later on, as that was in Chicago, and then later on with Jeff in New York, and which is a whole nother wonderful story about these Yiddish clubs, senior centers and Yiddish clubs, which were abundant in those days. And the women in particular, people would get up and dance sometimes, men would get up and dance, but very often the women weren't very comfortable on their feet. They didn't have the balance anymore. They weren't comfortable. And they would dance from their seats. And they would dance like this, and with hand gestures, and with shoulders. And it was the most wonderful thing to see, because they responded to the music with the upper part of their body. And for me, that was an incredible education in how movement connected with the music. I put a little plug in here for Steve Weintraub's chair dance. He's been doing a lot of chair dancing online. I think he does it a few days a week, not just Yiddish music, all different kinds of music. And there's some really exciting things. I know Jenny Romaine was doing some things with that at Klezcamp, I think. So there's sort of all these layers to that too. Layers to making dance and music and culture accessible to different abled people. And I got so much out of watching them, because so much is about the upper body. And the attitude, the face, the attitude.
Would you sing and dance for us?
Okay, you're not going to get feet. I'm going to use the same tune. Yabam bam 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 yabam bye 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 yabam bam 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 yabam bam 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 my my yabam bam 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 my bam 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 my I'm a little restricted. I have to do this with my headphones on, so I can't turn around and go in a different direction.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. You know, you talked about right now you are a performer. You dance by yourself, and then you have experiences leading dance. So can you talk about the difference between leading and what you just did?
Um, okay, there are a couple of things. I think it's really interesting that when we did soul songs, I forgot when we were talking that I had actually, I don't compose. Um, I think once you put it on your instrument, you are kind of composing because it can only sound like yourself, even if you're trying to get really inside certain phrases and nuances. You're already creating something. But whereas my wonderful colleagues have written incredible pieces, I mean, just uh, yeah, and some things that like kicked my ass in rhythms that I'm not used to playing, and it was wonderful. But what I did want to contribute was something that was me, and you know, I'm a I started studying Yiddish when I was in Chicago with Anita Turteltaub in 1989. And the very beginnings were quite easy for me because my Hebrew was pretty good. I could read easily. But it's just going to be a lifelong process. Um, I'm a late bloomer. And I just, that's that's a whole another conversation. But I wanted to contribute something that felt essential to me. So I did a dance. Um, and I danced to a piece of Adrian's, of Adrian Greenbaum, I think.
I think that's what happened. Yes.
And I read a Yiddish poem, a Kaja Molodovsky poem. And it felt like another way to share my voice. And I think being on your own and doing like the solo dancing, things that Zev and Steve and others, Avia and Asya, um, are so, I'm sure I'm forgetting now, um, but working so hard to make your own style within the vocabulary. And it's scary, it's very naked, and it's also difficult because we're piecing so many different things together. And you have to, everybody has to do work for themselves to be able to express yourself. And I think that's actually what's so exciting. And again, if you're new to playing klezmer music, and there's so many resources now, um, you find you're part of the process now. We're part of the Goldene Kette. We're part of the golden chain of continuity and tradition, and you have a right to express yourself. And I think we want to do more of that. We want people to have that feeling and keep that alive and work with gesture and language, trying not to be intimidated because you're not native. But that's why it's so interesting, and I will get to your question. It's why it's so interesting that we all, also whoever you are, you might not have the experiences that I had growing up with synagogue and with Jewish music, and I didn't even get to talk about my mom and her amazing work yet. But we're very fortunate to have among us some people who truly grew up in this environment, and we've lost many of those people, but we also have younger people who grew up in these environments. We have ways to access the different ways to connect. So there's very much sort of an individual process that goes on and should be celebrated. At the same time, we're a community, and that has really been shown so strongly during these COVID times, because the reaching out and different projects, like Ilana Sparagovsky, the Fiddle Project over the summer, and Craig Udelman's been doing some amazing things, connecting us all. And I think that connection, and the connection among lots of different kinds of people from different backgrounds, different identities, different, just every possibility that is embraced in this world. And then when you dance together, you get, it's intoxicating. And when you dance, if you're fortunate enough to dance maybe in a smaller group with people who are really knowledgeable into it, it's really, it's wild. I mean, it's just transformative. Someone like Steve, who can lead huge masses of people, and Avia, huge masses of people into beautiful shapes and marches, and that's really something to bring everybody together. And I've learned so much from that it's wonderful to be, when I do a workshop and we do dancing, we get the musicians up to dance, whether or not they're used to dancing. You want them to move their bodies. And sometimes it leads to dancing. Sometimes it leads to actually making shapes and doing the sort of more set dances. But it's also really important very early on to figure out how your body works and how you can express yourself. And that's true in playing, and that's true in the dancing.
You mentioned soul songs, and you mentioned reading a poem. And your Yiddish is beautiful. It sounds beautiful. I love listening to it. Would you read some poetry for us, please?
It's always a work in progress. And that's the other thing. There are so many Yiddish classes online now with the best teachers. If I started to name them, it would just be ridiculous. But there's so many organizations and so many ways to connect with the language. And always, for me, I mean, it was very exciting because over the summer I got to do the YIVO program. I've done it. It's the third time. I was an Unheber, I was a beginner, I was a Mittel 2, and then I took the advanced class this year, only over a period of about 20 years. And then you get these young folks who, oh, I've been studying for 2 years, and they're wonderfully wonderfully comfortable in the language. But we all have our own journey with that too, and it's really important to remind yourself that it's just a language. It's communication, you know, and it's very, very difficult because you feel a lot of responsibility. And, you know, there's a certain way in which you listen to someone. I remember hearing, I can't remember who it was a recording of, but I heard someone reading poetry on one of the compilations, someone who grew up in a Yiddish speaking home. And I remember just bursting into tears, realizing, you know, my father chose not to, he spoke Yiddish with his father, but he chose not to share that. And I'm speaking to myself, and maybe this is too much full disclosure, but you really have to just jump in. And I'm really trying to do that. And you get someone like Kolya Borodulin. We speak and email in Yiddish, and he's very wonderfully helpful, and that's just what we do. And I know that it can feel like an endless journey, and it is. I mean, I just realized it's going to take me my whole life. And that's just the way it is. So I'm not going to read the poem that I read for Soul Songs. I am going to read something from Kaja Molodowski, who a lot of people are obsessed with now. This is what started it all for me. This is Catherine Hellerstein's book, Paper Bridges, with really gorgeous poetic translations. So it's very accessible. It's in Oisius on one side and beautiful poetic translations because she is a poet. And Kaja Molodowski is one of my heroines. Just so, the imagery is so beautiful. The Yiddish is so beautiful, and she lived such an incredible, rich, long life. And oh, I had something else to say, but in any event, there's a wonderful poem that's basically, I have come out of darkness and hiding, which is really, really fantastic. But instead, I'm going to read, if I can find it. Okay. Wow, I actually learned how to do this. Woohoo. Okay, so this is amazing because this is one of her children's poems that she wrote between the 2 world wars in Warsaw. It actually has a melody that is kind of a camp melody that die Mama, der Bruder, die Schwester, and with a niggin by Zalman Lotek. But I've sort of absconded with it. I've sort of taken it and with Jeff turned it into something a little different. The other thing I love is sort of bringing something else out of it. I love using this with students because the language is very accessible and it teaches you a lot about movement, where strong beats are and lighter and less strong beats. So I'm going to start by reading it, and then if Susan thinks we have time, I will play it. Effent im teuer, effent im breit, es wird da durchgehen a goldene Kate. Der Tate, die Mama, der Bruder, die Schwester, chossen Kalle in Mitten auf a goldenem Schlitten. Effent im teuer, effent im breit, es wird da durchgehen a goldene Kate. Der Seide, die Bobbe, der Vetter, die Mumme, die einiglichen Mitten auf a goldenem Schlitten. Effent im teuer, effent im breit, es wird da durchgehen a goldene Kate. A bar, und ein Äppel, und Honig a Tappel, und a Leckach a Geller auf a goldenem Teller. And here is translation by my lovely husband. Open the gate, open it wide, a golden chain will pass through it, father, mother, brother, sister. I like, instead of chosn kala, to change it to acclaimed, a loving couple, in the middle on a golden sleigh. Schlitten, it's really great. Open the gate, open it wide, grandfather, grandmother, uncle, aunt, the grandchildren in the middle on a golden sleigh. Open the gate, open it wide, a pear, an apple, a pot of honey, and yellow honey cake on a golden plate.
Please play it.
So I know that sometimes those who grew up with it in camp, I've heard some people say that they're not sure about this because they grew up with it in a certain way. But in the spirit of our own voice, this is what it says to me and to Jeff.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And it's one of the ones that I love for working with instrumentalists on, because actually when I'm playing, I'm thinking of the words. And I know that there are a lot of, this isn't the only way to learn. There are a lot of, you have to learn in a lot of different ways, and people learn with different styles. But I found it really effective to take some song texts, poems, and work on where, as I said before, effent im teuer, effent im breit, es wird da durchgehen a goldene Kate. Not a goldene Kate, but a goldene Kate. Der Tate, die Mama, and then it's not regular, der Bruder, die Schwester, but der Tate, die Mama, der Bruder, die Schwester, according to your own desires, how you want to make it sound. Chossen Kalle in Mitten, a klein Paar in Mitten, auf a goldenen Schlitten. And the ends of, like, mitten and schlitten, where you don't have the it's not mitten and schlitten, that's really useful for playing, because you're not going chossen Kalle in Mitten, chossen Kalle in Mitten, auf a goldenen Schlitten. And it teaches you not just to be an instrumentalist and be in love with your sound, but actually to phrase it in a more linguistic way.
Deborah, so many things inform your playing. Your dance informs your playing. Your language informs your playing, and your singing informs your playing. And one of the things I learned about you was that you have a very beautiful singing voice. It's very gentle, it's very strong, it's very capable, and it's very Deborah Strauss. Would you sing for us, please?
Sure.
But could you unshare your screen?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I forget. Yeah, good. Much better. Um, yeah. This is a very short song. This is a humorous song with a lot of words. And it was wonderfully challenging to learn. I got it from the Ruth Rubin collection. At the time, it was just a stapled liner notes that I used to carry around with me, and then until they just fell apart. Now it's all wonderfully digitized. Lawrence Glamberg, Yivo, Eleanor Bazinski. I mean, it's like a candy store. It's just amazing, and people are doing such incredible work with these resources. And it's the whole, looking and seeing what people are doing with singing now, and Joshua Lesky and Ethel Rame, and it's just very exciting times. Try not to get overwhelmed. This is about Friday morning and being overwhelmed. This is about Friday morning and there's too much to do. You have to make a chicken, you have to make a stew, you have to bake challah. You're running around. And then it ends by saying, but don't worry, I'll close the shop, I will wash my hair, and everyone can say to me, Git Shabbos. I didn't practice this either. Ratig in der Früh setzt man sich nicht sie, a bissl abzuruhen. Überall zu laufen, als und zu kaufen, ach, jetzt in Stief, was ist es zu tun? Challah backen, kalk gehackt, bin Fischab, in a Bull bin ich machen. In a Chossel, bin habe nicht vergessen die Bulbe schommen, ins Zimmer voll mit Flammen, nicht vergessen die Joch zu schommen. Doch, meine Liebe, sollte ach nicht sorgen, bald noch den Kickelmilch am Morgen. Das Käpperle gezwungen, schön zieht die Kleid mit Schrabes, ihr meckt mir alle Sogen. Dwoire Jehides, Git Shabbos, Git Shabbos.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
That's what I was gonna say. I was just gonna say it's a mouthful. Yeah, you have to. It's better to warm up your mouth before you try to do it. But I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
It's really something. Like if I were to pick out a theme of our conversation today, and if I were to have to encapsulate you in a couple words, it would be love and passion. You've said I love so many times today, and your passion just comes through in everything you say and everything you do, and the love you have for Yiddishkeit and for Yiddish culture it just draws me in. It just draws me in, not only to you, but draws me into the music and draws me into the language and draws me into being a better player for dancing. You are a magnet. And you said something very interesting to me when we were talking, and you said, I wouldn't be a musician if it wasn't for klezmer. And I thought that was so beautiful.
It's scary.
Scary, why is it scary?
Oh, you know what? I really admire people who draw on very different genres and sources, and we all know our wonderful colleagues who do that and do it so well. And I don't do that. except when I learned to play some North German folk music, and I did a project with two other fiddles where we combine North German music and traditional klezmer music, and I made a recording with Andreas Schmidtke's Voices of Ashkenaz. It's a really nice recording. It doesn't get around too much. So that was amazing, but that actually, I connected to that because of the person who brought it to me. This was through Yiddish Summer Weimar and uh, oh, I wanted to say Vivian Lee, Vivian Seller. And her playing was so groovy and kind of like acoustic rock and rolly groovy, just amazing that it connected really deeply to me. And it's also a music that doesn't have, they have to do so much work to try to find the music and find the resources and actually get anybody to listen to it, because a lot of people are not interested in listening to German folk music among Germans, although I think it's changing. I forgot the question.
Well, what was the question? I'm just listening to you.
I have no idea.
Oh. You were saying that
Oh,
you said that it was scary to you that you only did klezmer. So,
but you know what's amazing is actually I found talking with you the other day and now, and having to remember some of where I came from with this, is really useful. It's useful to me. And I remember there's so much to express. And for me, it's not particularly academic. I was studying in a PhD program. I wanted to do both things. But it's not for me. I really love focusing in sort of a, well, academia can be very expressive. People are doing amazing things. But I wanted to be with all different kinds of people, like teaching with different kinds of people at all different levels and ages. And I just keep finding that there is so much to learn. You know, it's just to talk about Jeff for a minute. You know, he studied Yiddish he was in the advanced class when I was in the beginners class back in 97 or 98 when we first got married. He's always learning, and that feeling that we're lifelong learners, and that actually, you know, for him, it was also going to a cantorial path and wanting to work with people in that way, but learning language and music and nusach and the, you know, the prayer melodies and everything really took him to a whole another level in his person and in his work as an artist. When there's time, which we try to, you know, carve out. And there's just so much to learn.
well,
And actually, I'm so sorry.
you're
But
not to be sorry.
very specifically, because I found my home. It developed into all these things with dance and with language that came much later, really. But feeling at home at your instrument instead of feeling like it's a stranger. Now, I've definitely, we still argue, my violin and I. there are so many ups and downs. But especially in those early days, it really felt like all of a sudden I actually felt, I could do this. It just felt so good and so right, that it's just a lifelong pursuit. And it made it possible for me to play music and to access myself and not something from outside.
We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to leave with this thought, and I wanted you to talk about what are the things that excite you? If it were all to end tomorrow, what would you care about?
Wow. So is this everything ending or just me?
Well, that's an interesting question. If you have a preference, take that preference.
Okay, if it was just me, um, I feel I know I do have an answer for this actually. I feel very excited by what younger people are doing now. And this is actually, at the beginning of all of this, I was always actually the youngest. I was a bit younger than the people I was working with and playing with and studying with, by a pretty wide spread. And that shift to actually being, well, in the scene, 50 is still a youngster. I'm more than 50. I'm 55. Own it. But it's the first time that I've actually started to feel this gap, and also to feel all the things that I'm not so good at doing and that I need to look to other people for inspiration. Um, People who are teachers, like Esther Gottesman, who I teach a class with at the Shula, and it's so exciting because she went through this whole other process of becoming an educator, and I'm learning so much from that. Um, and young people, activists at the Shula. I could also mention young people like Greta Thunberg, but thinking more locally, some of the activists, these young activists who are 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, who really care about politics and the environment and identity. I also have to work so hard. I have to change my language. I grew up in a very different time. Um, and it's really, so I'm working a lot on that. Um, and challenging the way I naturally come out with certain things, but I actually feel as messed up. I would rather say something else, but I'm not going to. As things have been and frightening, I actually see in these much younger people a lot of hope. And that actually, I feel like I could, and that's also with what younger people are doing with Yiddishkeit and Yiddish cultural activism, but also generally. And I feel, and also because I didn't have children, um, I look to all of these just wonderful younger people. Ira Temple is another one, just doing amazing things. So I've got this collection of people, from little tiny ones to, you know, people in their 30s, people in their 20s, and as long as it'd be very hard to leave my husband and friends, um, but I actually would feel okay with it, because I think the future is promising.
That's because you're in it.
You know, sometimes it's a good idea just to feel small. It's okay to feel small.
It's okay to feel big too. Deborah, thank you so much for your thoughts, your time. I want to open it up to questions.
Can I thank you
Um,
first? Can I just tell
yes.
you how? So I've watched Susan from afar. I've adored her mother. I've worked on soul songs with her, but I didn't actually sit down and have a really deep talk until the other day. And she's amazing. um, and the way, Susan, the way you're conducting these interviews and making things happen in Philadelphia, and with the folklore society, and with your new life as a social worker, you just exude love and a sense of ease. So it made this really easy, and I'm really thankful.
Well, it was wonderful to talk with you. It really was. It was really wonderful to talk with you. And what I want to everybody to leave with before we start asking questions is your just love. Like, as Adrian Cooper used to say, big love. You just have big love. And the fact that you can, in the midst of this horrendous moment in time that we're in, have hope because of what you've given other people is amazing. Is amazing. And thank you so much. Let's go to some questions. Let's see what people have to say. Come on, question people. I have a question. We didn't get a chance to talk about your mother,
Oh,
and I know what it's like to have a mother that has I mean, I think everybody's mother has a huge impact on them. But talk about your mother.
she is 87 years old. She is still among us. She's um, quite disabled, so she's in a wheelchair. We recently had her come to New Jersey. Uh, I'm going to move backwards just a little tiny bit. We just got her a keyboard, and she's playing again. And this is a woman whose voice was so stunning. She was an incredible soprano. Um, and I still, when she sings now, would love to be able to sing like her. I mean, I grew up with her singing, and with my brother's incredible singing. Um, so that felt wonderful. And in the old days, we used to have the cantors come to the house, and they would get together. And Daniel Gildar, who just passed away, was in Buffalo at the time, and they would play and they would sing. But it's my mother's work with children that's so amazing. My creative work um, comes through her. My best song translations and working things out with with some cardboard and some what's that, tissue paper. She had such a love for what she was doing. She was so amazing with those kids. She did it for many years, and so creative, so musical, so just incredible. And that has been a great, great gift,
Yeah.
among a lot of other things. Um, but sort of that creativity and being, when you're with someone, when you're with a kid, you really engage with that person. Um, that I really got from her.
Yeah. And you can see because you've really spent so much time with children, educating them, creating for them. And uh, you know, I want to know with all your interactions with children. Well, not just children. I want to know. I want to pile all your teaching into one lump. Children, adults, in between, dance, language, singing, um, everything, everything you teach. What do you want people to come away with?
That they can express themselves and be themselves, and feel, have agency. That's sort of a new word. I didn't grow up with that word. But really to be able to express whoever they are. And I think that in our scene, we do a lot of good in that department. Um, Letting people express whoever they are.
Yeah. And really, I mean, what else is culture but an expression of the soul of a people, you know? And and like, you talk about how when you play, you're creating. You're creating because you're you and nobody else sounds like you. And you're created uniquely and you have your own neshama. And when you play, it's you. And what's so exciting to me about about bringing Yiddish music to people is that where once it was, I hate to say it was lost because it wasn't exactly lost. It was just it it stopped being the main expression of a people, and it's now becoming more of an expression. And what's so beautiful about the klezmer scene and the Yiddish culture scene is that the soul of our people is being re-expressed through music and literature and food and dance. And it's, for me, it's such an honor to be a part of it. And it's so amazing to have people like you who have such love and passion kind of leading the way, you know, kind of leading us in this. Here we go. Deborah, a question about the golden chain of continuity, as you call it. You talked about channeling certain performers, musicians, and teachers in your own work. How do you see this cultural continuity, channeling, embodiment for the next generation who perhaps have not had access to the same generation of teachers, but rather to those who learned from them?
Um, it's a great question. And the answer is in, first of all, there are some amazing culture bearers who are still with us, and seek them out. Um, but we also have a digital, and you seek them out, we have a digital world now. And you can study Yiddish with someone in Paris, or someone in Argentina, or someone in Israel, and they're there. They're there. And with a real sense of continuity. We also, the digitization of the Vernadsky library, the new Klezmer Institute, that's just, I think, just kind of put everything on this digital project of theirs. Check it out. I mentioned the Ruth Rubin. Sources, a variety of sources, and you have to look at all the components if you want, because that's you can get a lot from this amazing digital world, because things have been put up that weren't there before. And it won't replace the people Jeff and I played for in the 90s in Brooklyn, who would invite us to play, but actually only wanted us to accompany their talent. You can feel sad about a lot of, I'm really bummed about that Leon Schwartz story. You can be bummed about what your parents did or didn't do. But there's quite a lot there. There really is. And there's more access to it than ever before. So access it. There's just so much there.
Rachel Weston would like to ask, Deb, what are your tips for working with kids? Also, she wants you to know that you are both queens. You're a queen. I called you in one of the paragraphs I wrote about this. I called you the Empress of all things Yiddish. You are an empress.
Oh my gosh. I'm waiting out the pandemic in Princeton. We only have been in Brooklyn once, which is really hard, but it's felt safer to be where Jeff has his full-time job. And in Brooklyn, I have my tiaras. I do wear tiaras from time to time. It's very important for everybody to wear a tiara from time to time. Maybe it's why I feel so blue sometimes. I should get myself a tiara. I have an answer. And I'm sort of in this moment where I've worked for so many years making things for kids and making things up and being in the moment and being improvisational. And what I'm seeing is all of the amazing work that people are doing, the studies, the sort of new ways to talk with kids and about things and how you approach subjects and how to work on digital. We had a teachers meeting this morning with a wonderful special guest. So I feel in a very learning moment, but I have an answer. The answer is, if it's possible. I don't teach in a big classroom, so I can't really tell you. I've always taught either one-on-one, or I've had some classes at the Shula on Long Island that were maybe 20 some kids. Treat them like individuals and like they matter. I've learned so much. I'm working with a 12-year-old now, and she teaches me so much. We look things up. She knows things that I don't know. And it's just treat them as the people they are, and really feel that, really be inside who they are.
I want to read you something that your husband wrote. Susan and Deborah, thank you. I've known Deborah for a really long time, and today I learned some new things about her. Also, is she married? If so, that's a very lucky person.
I'm
And then,
lucky.
yeah. And then Alana says, thanks to both of you for your inspirational example and continuing care for the music in our community. You too, Alana Kravitz.
Yeah, big
Thumbs
thumbs
up.
up. And we're doing a class together at Y&Y. Don't forget Y&Y is coming up, and Ilana and I are teaching together about non-dance Eastern European Jewish wedding music.
Cool. And I am doing something at Yiddish New York too
Oh
called
yeah,
My
such a
Brush
cool
with
thing.
Yiddish. Yes, go on their website and look it up and sign up. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it really sounds amazing.
Yeah. And Naomi says, thank you, Deborah. That is very meaningful to me personally, as is your presentation today. I know my family enjoyed it as well. What a joy and a treat. For more information about the Philadelphia Folklore Project and Susan's Community Klezmer Initiative, please go to www.folkloreproject.org at Philadelphia Klezmer, at Phila Folklore and klezmerinitiative.org at Community Klezmer. Yes, let me just say that the Philadelphia Folklore Project has supported Yiddish music here in Philadelphia for a gazillion years. They supported my mother and continue to support my work and my endeavors. And if you could put a few shekels in the Pishka for the Philadelphia Folklore Project for what they've contributed over the years. May today's deposit in the Pishka be a cumulative thank you for all the years of their dedication to Yiddish culture here in Philadelphia. And now, not just Philadelphia. Look, we're all so vast. And what was so incredible about this was, Deborah, this was supposed to be you coming to Philadelphia doing master classes. This is what that grant was, and we had to re-envision everything. So that's where Klezmer Kaleidoscope came, with Zach Mayer teaching and you presenting, and that's where this conversation came from that grant. So thank you,
Wow,
Philadelphia Folklore Project. Thank you, thank you,
incredible,
thank you. Yes,
incredible.
yes. So I have a question for you. Um, would you would you say that do you separate yourself from klezmer, from Yiddish, from this Yiddish side? Is there an off switch? Is there a time where you separate yourself from this, what you have, and home life?
There are a few different ways to answer that. Um, I'm very happy to feel involved in Jeff's synagogue in the Jewish Center of Princeton. Um, I love being part of that. Um, there is a way in which we're always like a Jewish music factory, and the just what we're doing on a daily basis, whether it's synagogue work, teaching B'nai Mitzvah for Jeff, it's it's kind of just everywhere. Um, I think that this is the longest I've been in one place since I was in graduate school probably. So that was, so we're talking like 30 years ago. It's the longest I've been in one place. And as devastatingly depressing and frightening and tragic, and I don't even have enough words. It's really interesting to have stayed in one place. Now it's not Brooklyn. It's not where I've spent the brunt of my time. But it's a different kind of environment, and there are trees and places to walk, and you know, we don't go out to eat so much. And I think there's a way in which I need to find a way. I'm actually going to answer it this way. I hope it's okay. To find an off switch, nourishment, separate from the other part. I mean, there's a way in which it's always integrated. It's always there. That's you're living it. But there is a way in which you have to really think about what's, to be cliche, like what's important, and how you want to help people, and what it means to be in one place, and feel a little more settled. And you have to be, I'll just say, kind to yourself emotionally. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people struggle. A lot of us have struggled for many years. Genug showing, that's enough with that. But you have to take time to feed yourself, and not to let those things overtake time when you're not focused on something outside of yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see your future. I think it's going to be something as special as your life to this point has been. And I look forward to being there with you, discovering it as your friend. And yeah, would you be so kind, my dear, as to serenade us out with a song and some fiddle playing of your choice, and just feel free to just play and express yourself. You did a great job today.
You do a great job. You're amazing. Well, we talked about, I'm in more of a contemplative mood.
Okay.
So if it's okay, I'm kind of really into this Chabad tune these days, that Jeff and I did for the High Holidays. I think it's pretty well known, but it's a wonderful tune, and I've just been really feeling that lately. So I think I'll play that. Can I interrupt myself for 1 second? We need to talk sometime also about my connection with Yaela Hertz, who passed away a number of years ago. I met her at Klez Canada, and she also was huge in keeping me playing my violin. And that's a subject for another time. I'm sorry that I didn't mention that, but so fortunate to have met her at Klez Canada, and everything that she gave me and so many other people, in such an open, way. So she connected me back to actually practicing my instrument and doing exercises again, and how you can do that and feel okay about it, and have it connect with you. So may your memory be for a blessing.
Wow,
A good tune.
it's a good tune. And you bring it such lushness and life, really. Um, Deborah, would you like to, in the last 4 minutes, play us some Freilichen music?
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't refuse you. Let's play just because it's fun. Let's play and sing Zalman's Nigen. Um, and whoever is still around, I played it before, but it goes like this. Ay ba bye bye ay 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 ba bye bye ay ay. Wow, I even stayed on the pitch.
Ah, Deborah, it was so wonderful to open up your life a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your talents. Thank you, Philadelphia Folklore Project. Thank you, National Endowment of the Arts.